Welcome to STEM Stories. This is the podcast where we dive deep into the fascinating world of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I'm your host, Georgina Green, STEM specialist tutor and lifelong learner at Green Tutors. So thank you for coming and speaking to us today. It'd be really interesting to kind of hear a little bit more about your role and the things that have kind of led you to this role, and then also maybe some guidance on what advice you might give to somebody who's interested in the role of chemical engineer. I think probably at school, if we were to look at that title, we might not have a clear idea of what that means, and I'm not sure I do either. So I'd be very happy to hear a bit more about how would you describe your current role?
So, to begin with, I'd like to thank you, Georgina, for taking this opportunity to, talk with me and get to know a bit more about my career. So I'm Kanchan. You can call me Kanchan for short. That's absolutely fine. And I am a chemical engineer by background. I did my bachelor's in Chem Eng from Mumbai University. Then I moved to the UK in 2017, did my master's in Chem Eng from Imperial College. And then in 2018 or 2019 April, I began my career as a safety engineer in the industry, and I've been here for 5+ years now. So chemical engineering, I really want to, emphasize this, that it has nothing to do with just pure chemistry. It's a lot of things around chemistry. So, for example, if you have like a small product or something innovative that you've done at a research laboratory, for example, a pharmaceutical ingredient which could cure something, and we found that at a research laboratory. Chemical engineers come in when you want to scale up that process on a larger, larger manufacturing side of things, so that you can process it at much lesser time, make it more efficient, and have a mass number of that ingredient or that cure being produced for the benefit of everyone, basically. So that's just one example, but it's not restricted to only pharmaceutical industries. I've worked with different clients from backgrounds with oil and gas. You've got food industries, you've got specialty chemicals, catalysts, fuels. There's so much more you can do. Now, as a chemical engineer, I think what led me get into safety is it's more of a niche field. And there are many safety specialists required, in general, to make the sites more safer for the people to work on, to make sure that the regulations are followed to prevent any hazards. You see various kinds of news, where that things blow up on sites, there are explosions and things. So that's where safety engineers come in, to try and reduce and mitigate those risks, and check that everything is in place, to do assessments, and the site is following certain regulations and really not blowing the sites apart. That's where safety engineers come in. Not only this, but when the process engineers, I'll talk a bit about that. They are the ones who design equipment like reactors or distillation columns and such. And we come in at the point to review the safety of that particular equipment. Are there going to be any hazardous chemicals which are going to be processed in the equipment? Will there be any potential leaks on the equipment which could lead to further consequences, which could be hazardous and cause fatalities? So we work with a range of disciplines as well when it comes to delivering a project. So what led me to doing chemical engineering in general was the scope of a variety of industries I could go into. As I previously mentioned, I've worked with clients ranging from pharmaceuticals, fuels, oil and gas, petrochem, specialty chemicals, and so on. Not only this, but given the urgency of the net zero and sustainability in the UK and in the world overall, chemical engineers play an important role because they are able to identify what processes could be made better and could be made more efficient to cut down operating costs or to cut down the emission of toxic materials or toxic chemicals into the environment, recycling as much as we can, and so on.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Sounds like a really interesting role, but it sounds like it probably covers quite a lot of different things. Because if I've
Mhm.
understood correctly, there's a synthetic chemist who's designed the process, and then it
Yeah.
needs to be scaled up. So I
Mhm.
imagine you still need to have a good understanding of the synthetic chemistry, and then in that scaling up, there's probably more considerations because perhaps on a small scale, there's less safety concerns and less environmental concerns, but when it's massive there must be loads of things you have to think
Absolutely.
about.
So many things which are involved, and that's why so many disciplines have to, jump in. There's electrical department, there's process department, there's civil and structural engineers, and so many different piping, for example, as well. To connect different equipments from one place to the other, and they could be, kilometers apart. I'm just giving you a background of how a chemical manufacturing plant would look like, and
Hmm.
hopefully you can paint a picture.
Yeah, crikey, that must be. I mean, I guess that wasn't like a day one responsibility, but it sounds like it's led to quite a significant amount of responsibility in your role.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We are responsible because we sign and approve documents and check things to make that they are set in correct order and they meet certain specific regulations with the regulatory bodies who are specifically in place to prevent accidents on sites from happening.
Yeah, serious levels of responsibility. But I'm sure that that's something that you've kind of got more comfortable with over time, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's a matter of working with range of people at different, different stages in their careers, the seniors, juniors, and everything just comes together.
Yeah, fantastic. So this role that you have now, sounds
Yeah.
like it's kind of changed over time from the um chemical engineer to the more safety focused elements of that. What previous roles did you have that led into this one?
So so since I've started my career in 2019, I've been into safety from
Yeah.
the start of that. I mean, I did know about safety during university, but it was more process engineering and design focused,
Yeah.
rather than, diving deep into safety, which is what I'm getting to do now. And there are so many things which unfold when you do risk assessments and things, and you realize that safety is an important and integral part of any system or the process that you're working on. So I think it's various risk assessments, and it's not only one type of thing that I do. I do a range of different kinds of things. I work with modeling softwares where you have like a dummy model of a site that you put onto the software, and you probably define a leak of a particular hole size. For example, you have a storage tank which handles I don't know, liquid nitrogen or something, and you put a pin through it, and you imagine that there's a leak of the storage tank and what the consequences would be. So that software actually shows you different contours and different effects of how things happen, and if you add certain specific measures to protect that storage tank from leaking. For example, you could use a double wall tank to prevent this from happening, how the effects change. So it's kind of a dynamic model as well that we do sometimes. There's another area which is completely unexplored for me. It's computational fluid dynamics, which is a more complex area of engineering. Well, chemical engineering, I would say.
Yeah, maybe a bit more physics.
Yeah,
I guess there's a balance, isn't there? Because there's so many things that you could do to make the process safer that would end up costing a lot of money. So it needs to be manageable. Um,
yes.
I love the use of technology to model it all before doing it all.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned a good point there, Georgina. Money is an important thing which comes into consideration with clients as well. So some clients are, they are okay to splurge a lot of money making their sites safer, but sometimes are a bit skeptical. So as chemical engineers, we also do cost benefit analysis around, safer design of a process or process engineering in general. So how could we reduce the design costs or capital costs of a particular system design, for example?
Mhm. Fantastic. And I guess it depends on what it's for. Like if it's something that's going to be made a few times over the course of a year, or if it's something
Yeah,
that's going to be running for a decade or so, it's going to be a
yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Oh, fantastic. This podcast would not exist without the sponsorship of STEMazing. I'm very grateful to STEMazing, not only for sponsoring our podcast, but for the brilliant work that they're doing, fostering inspiration and inclusion in STEM. I recommend having a look at their website, stemazing.co.uk, which is what you can see right now, to see a bit more about the work that they do. Alongside the award-winning Inspiration Academy, bringing events into primary schools and inspiring young people to see their future in STEM, because you can't be what you can't see. There's a fantastic membership, which I'm a part of, for women in STEM to do more of this, fostering inspiration and inclusion in STEM, with monthly content shared on empowerment, inspiration and community that will help you to be a better role model and mentor to people in STEM. And finally, there's a brilliant library here of role models in STEM that you can go and have a look at and hear more about their STEM stories. Here's a shout out for our sponsor, Navigated Tutor. If you haven't seen this, I recommend having a look if you're in education. The Navigated Tutor platform gives access to a quarterly webinar and magazine and training resources. The first one I've already read and attended, and in minutes learned lots that's going to make a massive impact on the way that I support my students. This is brought to you by Arthur Moore, who is not only a fantastic tutor, but also the host of Tea and Teaching podcast and Tutoring Tips podcast, two of my most listened podcasts. So I recommend that you go and check those out if you're working in education at all, and sign yourself up to the Navigated Tutor platform for some fantastic CPD. You can get access to this at mooreedu.thinkific.com. That's mooreedu.thinkific.com. Is there anything on your kind of your academic or your career path that you think that you might do differently if you did it again, or happy with all of that?
I think I would say I'd want to from the beginning, I'd want to be more involved into pharmaceutical and biotechnology areas of chemical engineering, because that's got a lot of untapped potential, I must say. I mean, as we are growing in population, we are, going towards climate crisis. Biotechnology comes into play where we have renewable fuels, renewable resources, which could, potentially cut down the use of fossil fuels. I mean, I think I read a paper a long time ago where they were producing biodiesel from algae, which is such an innovative thought. And if that could be, a potential fuel to replace the current petrol and diesel that we're using, which are non-renewable resources, and also they're adding to, the global warming, it would be a breakthrough in discovery. So there's a lot of untapped potential and research which is waiting to be discovered in the biotechnology field. Also pharmaceuticals, I mentioned specifically because we know there are so many new diseases like COVID, for example. We have so many variants now. I've lost track. But you know, diseases like this, it's going to keep coming, and it's going to keep going as in when you know the human population is expanding, and there are so many factors affecting that too, climate change and relocations, or you know, things like that, migration, immigration, whatever. So pharmaceuticals is going to be in a lot of demand in the future as well. So I think I'd want to eventually want to go into more biotechnology and pharmaceutical areas as well, but also keeping in mind that we are working towards sustainability and net zero. Not only this, but I feel sometimes that I should have been more involved in AI side of things. So artificial intelligence, that's the next big thing. I mean, it's taking over jobs already. So you need to be up to date with the trends, and try and learn as many you know, tips and tricks you can pick up in that industry.
No, I know what you mean, but I mean, I'm guessing based on what you've said, but I'm pretty confident I'm a fair bit older than you, and I've kind of seen like technology skyrockets.
Yeah.
And it's obviously completely different. There's the tools and the resources that are available now are completely different to the tools and resources that I would have had when I was at university, because I graduated in 2005. It's quite some time.
Mhm.
It's just, I guess the most comfortable thing is just to be open to learning about things as they grow and seeing
Absolutely. Yeah.
what you
You
do.
don't want to restrict yourself to just one thing. For example, even me, I don't want to restrict myself to safety just because it is niche.
Yeah.
I'd want to explore other areas of the business like sales or business development, project engineering, and so on. Because given that you're at the initial stages of your career, you have that time, you have that mobility and chance to explore different phases of a job, or change your job roles, for example, different phases of companies. So, you know, try and absorb as much as you can. And I think switching careers won't be my advice. Stay in your field, but, you know, try and break through the mundane, and take lead on things. So, yeah, that's what I would suggest in general.
Perfect. I guess it's helpful if you work for a company with a variety of different roles. You can experience
Absolutely.
different things.
Yeah. And who promote and engage, or rather motivate you to take on different leads on different projects.
Hmm. I was thinking back to when you were at school. What was your favourite subject to learn there?
I think it was math, mostly because you know, it really put my brain to work,
Yeah.
solving complex problems and integrals and differentials. Not that I use any of that now. Yeah, I would say maths.
Yeah. I love it. I was not expecting that answer just because I never get that answer, but that's probably because I
How
choose
about you?
the maths and science, so people don't tend to like it.
Yeah. How about yourself?
I really liked biology, and that's probably still
Okay.
true now. But yeah, I I think it's interesting to ask the question of what you liked at school and what's changed since, because I really liked biology at school and found maths and physics really difficult.
Hmm.
But when there's no longer the need to do an exam and I can just learn it in my own time, they're really interesting subjects.
I know, absolutely. I think that's history for me, you know, just reading things and not just doing it for an exam or something and having that pressure that I need to get the dates right.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah, history is a very interesting subject to learn because it so frequently repeats itself in different scenarios. It's well worth
absolutely. I know. People never learn.
people are people forever. So because you have shared maths and because I am now going to play this to all of my students, can you tell me a bit more about like why you would encourage students to, I guess, continue their maths studies or be more open to maths studies that they potentially don't enjoy?
If you're wanting to stay in STEM careers, especially I talk as an engineer now, because engineering is a lot of math, not necessarily when I talk about safety, but when we talk about other side of chemical engineering, particularly, which is process engineering, it's a lot of calculations. You have to design different equipment. You have different capacities of those equipment. And, there are so many variations that you look at. Even when we talk about engineering in general, it has a lot of math to it. So I would say to, pursue yourself as an engineer, math is an important subject because it gives you that ability to analyze and approach a problem. It will improve your problem solving skills. And it also, paints a statistical picture in front of you. If there's a lot of data that you need to process, math comes in very handy. Making different graphs and charts and playing with numbers. It's that sort of thing that you should continue math for. Not only this, but apart from STEM careers, I would say if you want to become a chartered accountant or something, maths is the only thing that you should be focusing on when we talk about chartered accountants and things like that.
Yeah. I find it's given me a lot of problem solving skills. So even for
Yeah,
things that aren't necessarily directly maths, but if I look at a problem and I approach it in the same way as you would a maths problem, I'm thinking, right, what's the parameters here? What's the limits? What's the things I need to identify? What do I know about the problem already? That sort of attitude is applicable.
exactly. It really improves your analytical and problem solving skills, no
Yeah.
doubt.
And I guess you have to do that all of the time.
Yes, it helps you in general, in day-to-day life as well when you're doing budgeting or you're tracking your expenses and things, which children should learn from a very young age. Shouldn't be splurging a lot. They should, know what they're spending on, what their necessities are.
And then the last thing I want to ask you about, which is maybe a big question, how did you decide that this is what you wanted to do?
So to begin with, I did a lot of research during my college times, the junior college times. Looked at different disciplines, some niche fields like just doing IT or computer engineering as well. And I thought, no, I'm not really keen on programming and coding and those kind of things. So I narrowed my search down to core fields like chemical engineering or civil engineering, mechanical engineering. Mechanical and civil, I think, would have restricted me in my field of expertise and wouldn't have let me move from one place into another as such. But chemical engineering gave me the perks of, process and safety engineering as well, where there was a lot of analytical thinking, but also softwares or calculations which help build a particular system, and being a part of a process where you define a process, as I said, in a research laboratory, for example, you create something, scaling it up, that really, really piqued my interest, I must say, because as a chemical engineer, I was able to, define process flow diagrams, define various operating conditions, like pressure, temperature, the amounts of inventory that were added into particular reactors, for example, to give you a product, different types of reactors. There was so much to do and so much to explore in this field. So I thought of going into chemical engineering. And again, that wouldn't have restricted me to only chemistry or doing oil and gas things. It opened doors to a lot of fields like pharma, biotech, renewable energy. And I think it's paying off well now.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. I mean, I'm going to have a challenge talking to people on this series because I'm going to want to learn about loads of different jobs and think,
Yeah.
that sounds great. Have a job. It sounds amazing. Thank you very much for sharing that, Kanchan. That's really, really, really helpful to hear your story. It sounds like you are in a job that really inspires and motivates you now. And yeah, you've made use of all of the things that you enjoy, which is great.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. So it's great talking to you. I'll share some details in the notes for where you can see more about Kanchan online. But yeah, hopefully if you're considering engineering, chemical engineering, interested in processes and technology, that's a role for you to consider.
Absolutely. Go for it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Georgina.
Thank you.